Good morning. I'm Leonardo D'Urso, and this is my contribution to the mediation conference in Athens. The 2008 EU directives on mediation has been a key milestone for all EU member states in introducing various national legislations on mediation in civil and commercial matters. After almost 10 years since its adoption and since about 20 years from the start of the ADR movement in Europe, I think it's now time to look at all available data and statistics and evaluate what model and approach has worked and what has not worked in the recourse to mediation in a given jurisdiction. With this goal in mind, at the end of the last year, Giuseppe De Paolo and I were asked by the European Parliament to examine the impact of the directives on the recourse to mediations, and in particular, if a balanced relationship between mediation and judicial proceedings, as required by Article 1 of the directives, was reached in the majority of the member states. The entire study can be easily found online. So, as a first step, we identify 4 distinct mediation models that member states have used in implementing the directive. The full voluntary mediations, where the party voluntarily they go to the attempt to mediation before going to court. A voluntary mediation with incentives and sanctions that actually was used to most of the EU member states, where parties are usually have some economics or tax incentives to try mediation before going to court. A required initial mediation session is the model that used in Italy, and we will talk about in a few minutes, and a full mandatory mediations model where the litigants have to go through the entire mediation proceedings and pay the proceeding in full before going to court. These 4 models have been applied differently throughout the EU in different types of disputes, usually commercial and civil dispute, labor dispute, and family dispute. As a second step of our in-depth analysis, we propose to measure the effectiveness of a mediation model taking in consideration 2 indexes. At the same time. So the first index is the ratio between the number of mediations and the number of judicial proceedings in court. It's very easy. You take 1,000 mediations divided by 100,000 of judicial proceedings in court, multiplied by 100, and you get your percentage. The second ratio is the well-known mediation success rate. So that measures by dividing the number of successful mediations and the total number of mediations started. Well, using this methodology in each member state, we found that the main goal stated in Article 1 of the directives of achieving, again, a balanced relationship between mediation and judicial proceedings has clearly not been realized. This is an EU mediation paradox, actually. Despite of the benefit of mediation is still not being, despite the benefit of mediation, this procedure is not being used widely around Europe. Basically, the much less than 1% of civil and commercial cases go through mediation. So this first index into the majority of the EU member states is 1%. Means that out of 100 cases in court, only 1 goes to mediations. So in Greece, you have to measure your own balanced relationship index by, again, taking the number of mediations that happened last year, divided by the number of civil proceedings filed in court last year. And I guess that, like in most of the EU member states, is less than 1%. Well, among this general failure of achieving this goal, about 4 years ago, a pilot law on mediation was introduced in Italy. So this pilot law is quite simple. In about 10% of civil and commercial disputes, like inheritance case, real estate, banking and insurance contracts, before be filing a case in court, the parties has been required to to attend a first initial mediation sessions with a mediator. So with a professional mediator. If the one party do not show up, the judge can sanction in court. And if both parties they show up, and this session actually is almost free, only 40 euro each, and should be held within 30 days from since the date of the filing of the mediation request. So if if even one party wants to opt out, so they attend the session and they don't want to go ahead, they can opt out without sanction. If both parties and they think that they are there and they wish to go through all mediations, of course they start the effective mediation in the same section or in another sections. Well, the results have been astonished. With this model that again is not mandatory mediation, is a required presence of the parties in a first, in only like information sections or a first meeting, with only the party have to pay only 40 euro and within 30 days. So it's not fully mandatory mediation, only the first meetings. I want to stress this huge difference of the Italian model. Well, the statistics says that basically last year we had in Italy, and actually we know very well this model because we practice with my colleagues at the ADR Center. We practice this model every single day. So last year we had about in whole Italy about 200,000 mediation. 200,000 mediation. So our index, our balance index, score more than 100%, actually 110%. So we have more mediation than case in courts in these dispute matters, of course. And 50% of the time the parties they attend the meetings, they decide voluntarily to go ahead with full mediation. Otherwise, the other 50% of the time, the parties they opt out from the process. So this model now is best practice and is working very well. In Italy, and a lot of member states are looking at this model and to adopt this law and of course adapt to the local needs. In Italy, again, we have so at the same time in civil commercial disputes, so two models actually in place. This model on the first mediation in about 10% of the commercial and civil cases, and in the other 90% of the cases the recourse to mediation is still voluntary. But in this 90% of the case, so in the majority of the cases, we had last year only about 20,000, only 20,000 mediation. So much less, 10 times less than in the first meeting. This is a laboratory, and this is proves that actually that in the same jurisdiction, with the same lawyers, with the same culture of litigation, with the same law, with the same companies, with the same litigants, you have two incredible different results if you adopt one model, this required initial mediation section, and if you adopt the other model of voluntary mediation with sanction and incentives. So this is our experience, and again, this experience now could be a lesson and could be very useful to a lot of member states and in Europe to adopt this model. That after about 20 years in Italy, basically we went through 5 different mediation models and with trial and errors, and now we found a really good balance between voluntary mediation and mandatory mediation. That again, and I want to be very clear, the Italian model is not mandatory mediation, is a the required presence of the parties and the lawyers in initial mediation sections with professional mediators. And I think that Greece can take advantage of this model by importing and adopting, of course, to the local needs, this model. Thank you a lot, and see you in a next occasion. Bye.